Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start with a story in which a horrible employee paid for his actions and ended up in jail. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Revenge on ex-coworker. I worked at a gas station for over 2 years. In one of my other posts, I talked about my a-hole manager driving me to walk out during one of my shifts and later learning he was PO'd because I was rehired by the company at a different location. This is about one of my coworkers at the new store. My new manager was amazing, and I got along really well with most of my new coworkers except one. His name was Joe, and the only thing he cared about was himself. Here are some examples of the a-hole things he did. When he would stock the cooler, he would drink some of the products, not pay for it, and leave the empty bottle in the cooler. He would go on his 10-minute break for over 30 minutes sitting in his car with his friends. My manager lived nearby and would drive by now and then during his shift to see if he was actually working. Never made coffee. When a hot girl would come in and buy alcohol or tobacco, he'd look at their ID to see where her address was, and if she lived close to him, would try to get them to go out with him. He also had a girlfriend and a 6-month-old daughter at the time. He called me a nerd because I would wear a reflective vest when I swept the parking lot, sold some crappy pills from his car when he went on break. There was a group home down the street for mentally handicapped adults, and every now and then a group would come in to buy stuff. The guardian had a binder with each person's money in individual baggies. They always took a really long time going through each individual person, and when Joe was stuck with them, he would be annoyed the whole time. I didn't really mind because they were a lot nicer than some of the customers that went in there. After they'd leave, Joe would make fun of them. Those are just the things I can remember at the moment. I think the manager put up with them because he'd been there a long time, knew how to do all the third shift duties, and he had a baby. Not for long, though. Apparently, Joe had been stealing money from the registers when he worked third shift by himself. Our manager caught him one day while going through his paperwork, noticing his numbers were off, and then looking at the camera. The next day, Joe came in for his shift, and the police were waiting for him. He was fired on the spot, banned from ever entering the store again, and taken to jail. When I came in later for my shift, my other coworkers told me about what had happened, and I was glad that I wouldn't have to deal with him anymore. 2 days later, Joe calls the store, and I answer the phone. I realize it's him and ask what he needs. He says, "Can you just let me know when Tabby, other coworker who was nicer about putting up with him than I was, works next?" I assumed he wanted to know so he could come in while I wasn't there, knowing I'd call the police and get him arrested again. No, and I hung up on him. He calls back a minute later and says, "Come on, just..." I interrupt him and say, "I'm sorry, but I can't give out my coworker's schedule. It's against company policy, don't call here again." Felt awesome as F. You should have told him that your coworker was working at a time when you'd be there. Then you would have got to laugh at him while he was being arrested. And our second story. Strict compliance leads to a company screwing itself. I worked for a major government contractor for a government agency. If I named the agency or location, it'd be pretty obvious to people with long memories and an axe to grind. I'd risen up through the ranks because I have good technical knowledge and have a knack for seeing a big picture view of big projects and seeing potential problems. I was very good at what I did. Many managers didn't like me because I pointed out problem areas, over 75% accuracy, and I stated facts without regard for management politics. I didn't suck up. Some managers gave Fair-Haired Boy, a suck-up, credit for my work, which I'd done before Fair-Haired Boy was even working on the project. Then they desperately needed my technical expertise on a very large procurement, 8 digits. I wrote most of the technical specifications, identifying risk areas and the consequences of bad procurement decisions. Fair-Haired Boy dismissed my arguments as no big deal, and we can work around that, so management ignored me and ended up buying inadequate equipment. I was reassigned again, and Fair-Haired Boy was given what should have been my job with a promotion and big raise. My parting gift to project managers was a detailed memo highlighting every technical problem that I foresaw in that development and how it could be avoided. It was a very long list of nearly 100 watch items, and they ended up hitting almost all of them. As usual, management ignored me. Due to company rules and a lot of prior excellent personnel performance reviews, management couldn't fire me immediately, but I could tell I was being set up for termination. I was assigned a job to work directly with the customer as liaison, actually sitting on the customer site. Management figured I'd be an irritant and distract the customer from the company's issues. In the meantime, I'd keep our company informed about what the customer was saying behind closed doors, and I was supposed to tell the customer what was management wanted me to say was happening in the company. Management intended it to be a do-nothing job to keep me out of sight, out of mind. I don't do nothing jobs. I took it seriously. But after a couple of months, management told me in no uncertain terms that I was not permitted to answer the customer's questions about what was going on inside the company on the project, and that I was not permitted to talk at internal company meetings where the customer needs were being discussed. I was muzzled and set up for failure. Or so they thought. Now comes the malicious compliance that ended up with revenge. When asked by the customer instead of X or Y is happening, my responses were pretty much like, I am not permitted to tell you whether the project is significantly over budget, and management won't let me tell you whether or not the company is dropping design requirements for features A and B. I explicitly complied with management's directive of not answering the customer's questions, but I slipped in enough hints in my non-answers that the customer knew where to look and what questions to ask. The customer also kept meeting minutes and often recordings which always reflected that I did not answer questions about the subject under discussion, which was technically the truth. This was very critical later. Eventually, management couldn't hide that the project was way late and way over budget, which didn't surprise the customer thanks to my hints. The customer ripped the company a new one in their periodic contract performance review. Note, on government contracts, it's very difficult to get a low performance score. Really difficult. The company got a very low performance score. It was ugly, and the company lost a lot of contract bonuses, which would have been a big part of profits and management bonuses. And fair-haired boy was under such stress trying to solve the problems that I'd warned him about that he had a major heart attack and retired for medical disability at the age of 42. It was a bad heart attack. Naturally, management wanted me to be the scapegoat so they'd get to fire me, but the customer liked how I worked, and they protected me with very careful language in the performance appraisals. Basically, that the task I was doing was the only task in the company that was performing effectively, and everything else stank to high heaven. Upper management didn't dare fire me, or they'd anger the customer even more than they already had, possibly to the point of having the contract taken away for non-performance. One particularly nasty manager who really hated me had to give me a significant pay raise and bonus because of my work. The fallout from the review was bad enough that corporate headquarters did some management shuffling, and a few of my antagonists were suddenly gone. The raise and promotion ended up not mattering because the customer hired me directly working on the same project, but on the government side. This caused management to crap their pants because I knew all their dirty secrets and tricks. But I never ratted on any of the managers or company dirty laundry. I didn't have to. My new coworkers had previously figured out where to focus their attention and what questions to ask to get past the company bullcrap. I complied strictly with the terms of my separation from the company and gave away no secrets after I left the company. One of the best parts was that in meetings, all I had to do was put on an evil grin and the company managers would practically crap themselves, wondering if I was going to unearth one of their skeletons. I never did. I just liked watching them squirm. They got paranoid about being caught trying to lie to the government that they were admitting bad news up front. Because of bad performance that management admitted, it got even worse for the company. They decided to try letting their legal hounds on me for violating company non-disclosure agreements, but the customer's meeting minutes proved that I hadn't. The contract was restructured to eliminate several blind spots the company had used to their advantage. The customer's oversight of the company rose significantly. Profit margins on the contract shrank. Several of management's favorite employees suddenly had resumes on the street because their protection was disappearing. Even more managers retired or found other jobs. It was glorious to watch, doubly so because I let them do it to themselves. And I was extremely happy in my new job where I still work. I like the technique of not answering the question directly when there's a company policy forbidding the direct answer. Instead, one states the company policy that says why they can't answer the question. And our last story. A-hole VP finally has to answer for his dbaggery. Basically, we have a VP who's the caricature of a-hole bosses. He verbally abuses his subordinates. He confuses bullying with leadership, and he doesn't have a GD clue what he's doing. Well, I and a few other project managers had enough of his crap. We met for lunch, and one of my colleagues came up with a great plan. We learned the CSO's daughter was looking for a position, so we put in a recommendation for her and told her to do everything she could do to hide her relation, under the auspices that the VP and her dad didn't get along, and wanted to make sure she could get the job. She got the job. It went way better than we hoped. Not only did he give her crap and swear at her on a number of occasions, apparently he called her into his office and told her the only position he was willing to keep her for was under his desk. We got the organizational announcement on Friday, and it seems the VP is off to pursue the next great chapter of his life. I hope that chapter involves him shoveling crap somewhere. I didn't see the announcement until today when one of the other PMs texted, "Mission accomplished." I get dozens of those things a week, and I just ignore them half the time. That's what I love about crappy people. They are predictably crappy. You can always count on them to never change their actions, and they end up being the architects of their own demise. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.